Some time ago, I reviewed a couple of watches from Matthew & Son Watches. That's MAS Watches. If you're curious about their website, maswatch.com. And it was the Irukandji, their very first release. They're up on Kickstarter with 3 colors, a black, a sunburst blue, and a sunburst pink, which is an unusual choice for an initial launch. And it was a very fun watch, very strong sunburst effect. I would call it a unisex watch. It was just perfectly sized for females with large wrists and obviously men with small wrists, but it also worked very well for men with medium-sized wrists. So there's a lot of positive things about that watch that I enjoyed, and I'll link to the review here on YouTube. And the only thing that I was concerned about was that it was a prototype, and some issues did come up, such as the loom not being very strong, and other typical issues you sometimes get with a prototype that may be addressed in production. So Matthew had kindly offered to send me a production watch, and he's since expanded the color choices available. So up on the screen here you'll see 6 colors that are now the current choices you can actually buy directly from Matthew and Son, you know, there's a wide range of colors that are kind of interesting. You get the usual colors you'd expect, like a black, but you got some unusual colors like a purple or green, a pink, an orange, and so on. So black and blue, quite expected. The other colors a little bit more unusual, and it just makes for some interesting choices for your wardrobe. So definitely I was very interested in reviewing these again, and he also has 2 new colors coming out which are up on pre-order right now, a yellow and a red of the Irukandji. And the Irukandji, by the way, is the name of a venomous jellyfish from Australia, and you know, he's kind of named the colors with suitably poisonous names like Deadly Black and Stinger Pink. So it's kind of fun. But let's take a look. Let's have a look at this new production timepiece compared to when I previously looked at the prototype. And I'm just giving this a fresh look. I haven't even re-reviewed my previous video, so I don't even remember what I said because I review a ton of watches. I do remember that the loom wasn't too strong and that the sunburst was great. So I picked out, he gave me a choice, anything I wanted. I picked out a green, which I have here. Again, this is actually a mixed review. So first of all, the sunburst on this green is absolutely awesome. As you can probably see, just indoor lighting, not making any particular effort here to light this watch up, just the overhead light from my office lights. And I was out today with my wife. We took a bit of a hike and just got out the car, was kind of busy doing a few things. So let's just snap some pictures now before we take a hike, because it was kind of getting towards dusk. So, you know, you can see a couple of pictures up here. They came out pretty nice. So that was without any effort. You know, I'm not particularly editing these pictures or taking a ton. Just snapped 2 pictures right by the car, closest green plants we could find right next to the tarmac. So not particularly a wonderful looking shot, but you can see the sunburst works really well on these watches. So I will give the sunburst an 11 out of 10. But this is unfortunately going to be a bit of a mixed review. So let's get stuck in, talk about the specs and the features. We'll talk about the packaging first of all. So this is the production box that I was sent with a nice MAS on it. It's quite light. Not particularly concerned about the box, a cardboard box. A nice touch, and I believe everyone has this, is I had a card from Matthew's young son. And then Matthew wrote a very nice note on this card for me, so I really appreciate that. And I do believe he handwrites a note to every customer, so he's actually a super nice guy. I've enjoyed talking to him. He's definitely into watches, so he's not just one of these people that wants to start a brand and a market, but he's doing it because he loves watches, which is a plus for me. But what I did like, you know, box was nice and small, easy to stack and store. Nothing particular about the box. I'd rather not spend money on getting a wooden box and have that money go into the watch. But we have a very nice watch roll with the Matthew and Son logo on it there. And it's a kind of canvas style watch roll, which is okay. Very convenient. And you can have room for several watches, straps, maybe some tools down here and so on. And you can see I had the original bracelet in here. which is a signed clasp, a diver's safety clasp. And this is unfortunately not a push button but a friction. Anybody who knows me knows I absolutely dislike friction clasps because sometimes I find them rather problematic. And we'll talk about this in a second as well. But it is a straight end link bracelet. It is included with the watch along with a two-piece Nato strap, which actually looks super good with this black bezel. So I really love this Nato strap, finding it very comfortable. It's unusual. I'll get this off the wrist right now. It's unusually a kind of double width single keeper, floating keeper. And I actually find this is actually a nice feature I haven't seen before on many straps. And unlike single width keepers, where even if you have two of them, they tend to move around a little bit if they're floating, this one doesn't move. It stays in whatever position you put it in. It is extremely comfortable and very practical. This has now become my new favorite for a keeper on this style of strap. And it is a two-piece Nato. So while we're here, you can see the back. It has a very nice pressed case back. It is a 200-meter weighted watch. It is domed sapphire crystal. And the shape of the watch is very unusual too. It's kind of like a flying saucer shape. So it is actually kind of curves inwards as you go up the case. So there is a curve on the ceramic bezel there as well, which is nice. So I call it like a flying saucer, but it means that the size at the base of the watch is actually a 42 millimeter. So I have a 7-inch wrist right now. Normally I have a 7.5-inch wrist. But I've lost a bit of weight, so it actually looks pretty good on my wrist. It doesn't look small, looks 42. That's a great size for me. 42 or 44 is my go-to sizes, but it narrows up as it goes up. But also the lug to lug length is very short because the lugs don't protrude at all, not very far at all. So the lug size, I'm just checking my stats here because I measure these, 46 millimeters. So this is actually wearing more like a 40 millimeter watch, despite being a 42, or maybe even slightly smaller. So you can get away with this watch on a 6-inch wrist. That should not be a problem. There's plenty of room here. I've got a 7-inch wrist. That's probably about the limit. But given the color choices, it's a very unisex watch. You can wear whatever color you want, obviously, but there's something in there for everyone. There's a nice wide range of choices, and the sunburst's a lot of fun. I would recommend not going for the black because there's a ton of black watches out there. Get one with one of these sunburst effects. They all work the same way with a deep dish and the curve sunburst effect on the kind of brushed finish on the dial there. It really works very nicely indeed. So loving the sunburst. You've got the rough dimensions, starts at 42 and actually narrows to 39.5 at the bezel. So the bezel is actually 39.5 even though the base of the case is 42. One unusual feature with this watch that I absolutely adore is the fact that you can have the crown either at 4 o'clock or very unusually at 10 o'clock. And I'm left-handed, so I wear my watches on my right hand. And I have to admit, if I'm going to wind a watch or do something, I don't want to reach over like this. I always take the watch off from my wrist. But imagine being able to unscrew it, because it's a screw-down crown, and then just wind it here at 10 o'clock. As a left-handed person, that is a superb option, and another reason to recommend this watch. And there are other nice touches as well, like you have these holes are fully drilled through, so this happens to be a quick release strap, which is nice, another plus for these straps. But if it wasn't quick release, you could actually push a pin through here to easily get the straps out. So you can tell that Matthew is into watches because he's gone for some of these features that makes changing a straps and enjoying a watch a little bit easier. So overall, specs are pretty good. Seiko NH35A movement. But before we get any further into the specs, let's talk about the price. So the price up on the maswatch.com website is obviously in Australian dollars. 475 is the full retail, and that works out right now at $338 for retail, which is a really good price. It's obviously not a low-end price, but it's not a high-end price either for what you're getting. You get a solid link bracelet, this strap, and it's a really decent watch. So I think the price is pretty spot on for retail. You can't really compare that to a Kickstarter price because that's now the retail market. But if you want to look at pre-orders, they have those two new colors coming out, the red and the yellow. The red should be really interesting. I'm a real sucker for burgundy watches, and it kind of looks like it could be a burgundy color possibly. And those are 375 Australian dollars, which is only 265. And at that point, the pricing gets really good, I think. So definitely consider pre-order pricing when you can see it, or if you see a sale price in the future, you might want to jump on that if this watch is of interest to you. So 200 meters water resistance rating. The height of the watch is actually fairly high given the size. It says 13.13 millimeters height to the top of the bezel, or the base of the bezel perhaps, but I know including the domed sapphire glass here, it is actually 15 millimeters, which isn't a big deal for a dive watch, but considering it's 42 millimeters or less, 39.5, it's quite a noticeable size, but I think that actually adds to the charm. It doesn't feel top heavy, even on a Nato strap. It's a fairly light watch overall, so because it slopes up, it actually feels very comfortable on my wrist. So I'm enjoying the styling of this watch a lot, and I love the sunburst effect. So definitely a plus for me on the design. It's not a cookie cutter design. It's a little bit unique with a kind of blasted finish on it as well. So on the negative side, pretty much there's some similarities to my last review. So one of the negatives, and it's not a showstopper for me, is the loom. The loom is very poor, very faint, and tends to fade out fairly quickly. What I'm going to do is I've been indoors today. I was out with this watch earlier, but it's been nighttime for a few hours. I am going to go hit the lights, turn the lights off, and then be back in a few seconds, and we'll just put a UV torch on that so you can see what the loom looks like. So just give me a few seconds. Okay, I'm just making my way over here, and of course nothing's in focus. Where are we? It's really hard to... There we are. There's the watch. Let's get that in focus for you. So I'm just going to loom that up. I'm not going to give it full more than a few seconds of loom. So the colors look pretty, that's for sure. It's a nice blue. I would have loved to have seen a green loom on here, which would have looked stronger to the human eye, given that this is a green watch, but they're all, I think, a consistent blue color loom. So it works pretty nicely when it does light up, but the loom fades super fast, and it's not particularly bright when it starts to fade. So I have trouble using this loom at night, and it's definitely an issue for me. But it does look nice. So if you're going to loom it up artificially, or the first maybe half hour or so, you've got this watch, wonderful. But I slept with this watch a few times, and during the night I really had trouble telling the time. So definitely kind of not high marks on the loom here. I'll be back on that in a few seconds. Okay, so obviously if you're going to go diving and timing a dive or something like that, maybe loom counts, but otherwise it's just a very convenient, nice feature to have on a watch. And I would argue that's not necessarily a showstopper, but the loom is probably equally disappointing. I do note that on the campaign and also on the website, it specifically does say things like, oh, it's a ceramic bezel and so on, so it mentions all the pros of the watch, but it doesn't mention Swiss Superluminova. So I wouldn't be surprised if this loom is something else, because I don't find it to be long lasting or particularly bright compared to some other watches. Like if you take a classic example of a really strong loom watch that's a Microbrand will be a Zelos. This is not in the same league. I mean, it's decent, it's better than some AliExpress crappers, basically, those $100 dive watches you can pick up that you question if you could actually even go diving with them, where the loom just fades out almost instantly. This one does have some longevity, but it's not a particularly strong loom. So that's one negative, not a showstopper for me. I do have a couple of other negatives, however. One of the pluses that I like to read about with this watch is that it being Seiko NH35A, it's supposedly regulated at the factory, which is really cool. Because having a regulated watch means it's going to be more accurate than by default, as opposed to just throwing in the movement and not trying to regulate it. You know, you buy the movements from Seiko, they get shipped to the factory, the watch gets assembled and they just slap it in and close it all up. You know, it's not going to run so well in terms of accuracy. But if you spend 5 minutes just playing with some of these adjustment areas on the watch, you can actually have it running more accurately, you know, in terms of gaining or losing seconds per day. And Seiko NH35As are not really well known for their accuracy anyway. So if you can improve that and get down from, who knows, maybe 30 seconds down to like 2 or 3 seconds, if you get lucky, wonderful. That's pretty decent. On the whole, every time I've taken a watch to somebody that's a Seiko NH35A and paid them to regulate it, I've been having a really good experience, even though it depends what position it's in. If I say crown up, because I'm a desk diver, I'm sitting at my desk most of the time, I want to have it regulated for that position to be the most accurate. I can get close to 0 seconds per day, you know, 0, 2 seconds, you know, maybe something in that kind of a range. It doesn't mean that it's going to behave like that depending on how it's being worn. It's not going to be the same as a more accurate Swiss movement. But anyway, hearing that it's regulated from the factory, I had some anticipation that I could at least get 6 or 7 seconds per day out of this or something. Unfortunately, I'm finding this one's running up to 12 seconds per day fast. Not really the end of the world. It's probably better than if it started life at 30. So I wouldn't call this a true regulation. And I also noticed the crown is really rough in terms of winding it. So it doesn't feel like it's been well lubricated. And a good comparison for me is the Venturo Field Watch number 1. Venturo is a spin-off brand from Grupo Gamma. When I wind that, it's buttery smooth. Somebody stripped that movement down, lubricated it, reassembled it. And, you know, obviously you're paying extra for that kind of quality. So this is more of still of an entry-level watch. I'm not convinced that it's been regulated at the factory because it's just running typical for a Seiko. But maybe it has. Maybe it was doing 30 or 40 seconds per day. I think the range on these is up to plus or minus 40 seconds per day. And maybe they got it down to 12 and it's been improved. So it is possible. So I'm not saying it isn't, but I don't get the feeling being rough under the hand to wind, that it's been regulated. And the third reason that I feel this may not be regulated, I have a watch that actually isn't really usable. I have great difficulty pulling the crown out to any position to either adjust the date or adjust the time. I can unscrew it, it pops out, I can wind it. If I try and pull it out to the first or second stop position, it takes me about 2 minutes to get that out. So a watch shouldn't really come like that. Could have just been bad luck, might have been banged around in transit or something, though the packaging's pretty good and it's a fairly robust movement. I've seen that kind of thing once or twice before, but only on watches that have come from somewhere with not very good QA. So that was maybe I just got unlucky thought. But, you know, I'm combining that with a couple of other issues that I have with this watch as well. So another issue, and it's not really anything I'm too bothered about, but I'm just adding all these up. So one negative is this watch would have been probably returned if I was a paying customer, because I can't, you know, pulling the crown out is an issue. Another issue is I was given a choice of the crown. I'm left-handed, so I said, 10 o'clock, please. And I got it at 4. I'm not complaining because it was so kind of him to send me another watch to review, and I'm grateful for it. But if I was a paying customer, I would be a little unhappy about that as well. And the third thing that I have as an issue is this bracelet. So there's 2 issues with the bracelet. It is a fairly nice looking bracelet. As I mentioned, it's a milled clasp, which is nice. It's got the Matthew and Son on it. Lots of micro adjust positions, so overall it has a nice look to it. It is a friction bracelet, and I have 2 issues. One is a minor issue, and that's just personal taste perhaps, but having straight end links when you've got a curved case, you haven't got any special ribbing or anything, that just kind of looks cheap. I would have liked to have seen end links finished to match the case. So that's just a taste, not really the main issue. But the main issue I have with this bracelet is I had great difficulty using the friction. It was just so damn tight. I had to press really hard to do that. The safety is very fine, but getting this on and off the wrist, I can't do that. It's like breaking my nails. It's going to take me a couple of minutes to get this open. I can do it like this because it's off my wrist, but imagine that's on my wrist and I'm trying to open it to take it off. So I actually had to take this bracelet off and I can't use it. So bracelet for me is, I would say, unusable. So I may have just been unlucky, right? So unlucky with the movement. But if I add up all these factors, the movement sticks, I can't actually pull it out to the stop positions. Takes me about 2 minutes. Something is wrong there. That needs to be serviced. And definitely I'm not getting the feel that it's been regulated if it's running like plus 12 seconds a day with 0.7 milliseconds beat error. So that's one thing. And then the next thing is the bracelet, too stiff to use. And then even though I'm not a paying customer here, I'm just really appreciating having this watch so I can review it, but sent the wrong one, didn't send the one with the crown at 10 o'clock. You know, one thing is like, oh, just bad luck, right? But that's 3 things. If I was a customer, I'd be unhappy about those 3 things if I had paid for the watch. So based upon those features, those 3 negative points, if you like, I would not be stocking this watch, unfortunately, in the Microbrand store. And I'm so disappointed because I really like Matthew. He's definitely caring and considerate and probably would not enjoy seeing this review, and I feel very sorry for that. And I love the look of this sunburst effect, so it's kind of killing me. It's actually pretty disappointing that I can't carry this because I was looking forward to carrying a watch like this in the Microbrand store. It looks great. I think overall I'm going to keep wearing this watch and I will send it off to a third party to get it serviced next time I send in some watches. Matthew has said I can keep this watch, which is nice, so just full disclosure there. I don't normally get to keep watches I review, but it doesn't matter whether I keep them or not. That will never ever affect me giving an honest, candid review. So I do have some negatives I'm feeling bad about. If you don't care about the bracelet or you're going to use your own bracelet, there's plenty of cheap bracelets with curved end links and better clasps, but this Nato Strap works awesome, so very happy with that. I probably just had bad luck with the movement. So overall, if you like the look of one of these watches, especially if you get one on pre-order, the price is very good. You might want to go for it. And definitely, I could recommend the look of this watch, but it's given the kind of 3 dings here. It's just, if it was 1, maybe I would go along with it, and we probably would end up asking to stock this in the store. But given that there are 3, and he knows I'm a reviewer and he's trying to make a good impression on me, I was not very impressed with the movement and the bracelet and the fact that the crown wasn't the 10 o'clock. Again, I'm grateful to even have this watch, so it's not a lack of gratitude on my part. I'm just assessing as if I was the paying customer, trying to look at things fairly and squarely and not through a lens that's been tinted by the fact that I'm allowed to keep this watch. So Matthew is a really great guy. He also has a dress watch that's just come out that's on pre-order, so you might want to check that out anyway, maswatch.com. I have a feeling he'll take care of customers, just the way that he's behaving towards me and other people I've been dealing with who've purchased his watches. So I'm not saying they're a bad brand, they're probably a good brand, but often when you get a first watch come out, there are teething issues because you don't know how great the factory is, or maybe you've got to source a bracelet from somewhere. It's a tough job just to get things absolutely perfect, and then you sometimes have to go along with what you end up with. But I will show you one more thing just as a quick bonus at the end of this video. I did receive this 2 days ago for Matthew, and I have to say this is an excellent product. So this is one I backed on Kickstarter, so that can fit through a keyring, and it's basically, it's round, so it's kind of a, I don't know, maybe a bullet or pill, giant pill shape, but you can unscrew one of 2 ends, and one end is going to be a spring bar tool, which is this end. So that's great, so it helps you change watch straps. And the other end you can probably choose to be a pin pusher for links on a bracelet. Just going to screw this up. Okay. and unscrew the other end because I got a very hot day today and very high humidity. There we go. So sorry for taking my time on that. And I picked a screwdriver because sometimes I have screwed links on bracelets, and I kind of thought that might be more useful. A small, probably 1 or 2 millimeter screwdriver, or probably 1 millimeter. So it's a very simple tool. And I've definitely got spring bar tools I can travel with that pack up very nicely, and protective covers so you can put them in a bag or something. But this on a key ring, if I go out, I'm probably going to just stick this on my key ring when now I'm done with this review. Definitely it's a nice extra. So, you know, Matthew & Son, an interesting startup for sure, a genuine microbrand, and some interesting products. So do check them out. The fact that I've been negative about 1 or 2 aspects of this watch does not take away from the fact that this watch is an absolutely gorgeous sunburst, and still an 11 out of 10 in my opinion for the sunburst effect. It's got some well thought out features as well. It's a balanced design. The chapter ring marks the individual seconds or minutes, so you don't just have the major indices, but it's hidden off the dial, so it doesn't interfere with the dial at all. So it's just basically you're enjoying one huge sunburst, and it's one of the most fun watches I've worn when it comes to sunburst. So I will certainly be getting this movement fixed up, send it off to my watchmaker who does servicing for me, and then he'll fix that up for me, and I'll keep wearing it on this Nato strap because it's super comfy. And this bracelet will just go back into the watch drawer, and that will go in my closet. So if you have any questions, do let me know. I hope this was useful for you, and thanks for watching. Take care.